Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. First of all, a bit of an apology. Sound quality and ambient noise will be heard. I'm actually at a farm at the moment, trying to focus for once. It's been a very unfocused few months, as you may have guessed, by lack of podcasts and lack of reviews and lack of all sorts of things. Sort of batten down the hatches, focus on family, and get through turbulent times, which, comes to all of us, and it's all part of life. And, we grow from it, and it's definitely been a learning experience. So thank you for your patience and support from a lot of you. Nothing deeply traumatic, but a lot of things all at once. Everything everywhere all at once. And it's nice to sort of be able to do this again now and get back on the bike. So Frodo, who you're going to hear in a minute, was, again, like all of my guests, just such an inspiration. I'm really enjoying speaking to different types of magicians, but also different types of performers. And I think the older I get, the more important that's becoming. And this, we go pretty deep, pretty fast, as tends to be the case. Frodo is someone who I remember as a street performer many, many years ago, who now works with Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas and lives there at the moment. And you'll hear all about that in this chat. And thank you again for listening and your patience. It would help a great deal if you were to leave a 5-star review for me and give me some feedback. Podcasting is one of those things, as I've said before, that you kind of put out there, and, because of the way it's imbibed, people listen to it in the car on journeys and get home, and quite rightly, the first thing they're thinking isn't, better get on a computer or get on the phone and leave a review. But if you do, it would be really lovely. There's a lot of people making podcasts, too many, you may think. So, getting that review and that share is just, every one makes a massive difference. So if you could do that, that'd be lovely. And if you could please sign up for my mailing list. Don't worry, I won't spam you. I know there's a lot of them around as well, and I really want it to be of value to you. I've got some really interesting projects coming up, and all I want to do is be able to share them. So if you go to stevefaulkner.com/newsletter, stick your email in there. You can unsubscribe anytime, but that'll be lovely. Sorry, a little bit out of breath because I've just been walking quite quickly. Thank you very, very, very much to brilliant magician and winner recently of the Sheffield Circle Magicians Close-Up Magic Competition, which was well-deserved. He's a great magician and a lovely human being. Says, thanks, Stuart, for editing. So here's my conversation with Captain Frodo. Let me know what you think. And there is some corkers coming up.
When I put the money in the envelope that says it's got nothing in it, that seems a little bit too obvious, but maybe it's a double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. Double bluff. When I put the money in the envelope that says it's got nothing in it, that seems a little bit too obvious, but maybe it's a double bluff.
Let's go. So I'm excited. This is my first one back in a few months. And you've been doing your podcast solidly, right? The Way of the Showman.
Well, yes, I have. I did the first season during the pandemic, and then at that point, I was releasing it weekly, and I was writing, because my podcasts is in the beginning, and parts of it is me talking.
Yeah, I heard, I listened to a couple.
From scripts that I have prepared. So some of those are book length. So the last one I finished on the relationship between showmanship and play. That was 30 episodes that I then write out in longhand what I'm going to say, and then I use those manuscripts. So the first, so that I wasn't that was a long digression, but it's like I couldn't keep up with doing it weekly when I was writing my own episodes as well. So then when I had a break, I was going to release it in sort of blocks. or seasons, and then I swapped to doing it bi-weekly, and it has gone bi-weekly then since I started back up again then in 2021 or whatever. So yeah.
So did you do that thing that I don't know, because I don't know a lot about you. I remember you from Covent Garden, I think, or street performing somewhere. It might have been Australia. But do you do that thing that I often do, where you throw yourself into something without thinking of how much time you've got, and then you realise you have to adapt? Or did you have loads of time then, and then other things happened? Because you're busy, right? You're super busy now. You're in Vegas with Cirque du Soleil at the moment with a proper job.
But there was one period where I was not busy, and that was the pandemic.
Yeah, of course.
So
some people were, man, on Zoom. Some people were doing loads of Zoom stuff.
Yeah, I did a little bit of Zoom stuff, but I am a live performer. And although I have a background where I did some video editing and filming and making DVDs back in the day, we had a company still going, Carnival Cinema. We're making DVDs for people who were doing shows so that we could sell DVDs after the show. But the idea being that you don't put your show on the tape. That's not what you're selling. You're selling a DVD of behind the scenes and old acts, and so you put together a product which is showing the lifestyle, taking a leaf out of skateboarding videos and whatnot. So we were doing that. But to translate this into producing myself on screen, I did it a few times during that time, and it just wasn't quite my thing. It's also, although I do a lot of magic, and most of the creation that I'm doing these days is related to magic, I do stage magic. So I didn't have, I needed to try and refigure what I would do. Doing the circus things that I do on the screen, that just didn't translate for me.
It was an awful thing. I remember, because magicians kind of had it easy. We had very quickly stuff that really worked on Zoom specifically. But I know stand-up comedians that did these stand-up shows, and also musicians. And I remember being part of a bigger Zoom show, and it was soul destroying seeing a musician get no feedback, and a comedian, and it's just the hard. Even when I do Zoom meetings, it's hard enough. Like when I do live teaching sessions with loads of people, you're not getting the instant feedback, and I'm pretty sure that was unsustainable for a lot of people. I can't imagine how bad that was.
Yeah, I found it difficult, but so I threw myself into. I've always had, as well as performing. Performing is my main thing. And I perform all year, all the time, and this has been my only way of making a living throughout my life. I've never had another job, so it's always performing. But I am also expressing myself more intellectually and whatnot through my podcast. So that's and I do writing. So that's why I have this sort of dual process. When I'm in Vegas now, for instance, I got a family. So when I leave them behind, the thing that I do that keeps me sane, and that also makes it feel like the days are passing and that I'm doing something productive, is that I have a writing schedule when I am at these places. So I get up, have my coffee and whatever, and then I write. Working on this book now. So I've been doing that up through my career, and what I'm writing now most frequently then ends up as stuff that I talk about on the podcast, on those in between episodes where it's just me talking for half an hour, 40 minutes about the topic or whatever. So yeah, I got those two things going, and I threw myself into writing. So actually, kind of funnily enough, the book that I'm working on now, that's in its absolute final stages, is trying then to picture what the way of the showman, which is the name of the podcast, what does that actually mean? What can you use that as a philosophy of life? So I wrote that during the pandemic, and it was like 35 episodes or something like that. And then I've taken that material, completely transformed it, and made it seem not just as episodes, but as one whole that has a thread that goes through it. So I'm sort of back now working on stuff that initially really came to fruition during the pandemic.
Do you think there's how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm almost 50.
Yeah. All right. So I'm not transferring this onto you at all, but that what that means the way of the showman. I think in the last couple of years I've had a lot more of, because I have a similar thing where I love writing. I haven't written for a couple of years and I'm really missing it. So that's been something that's drawing me back. But the writing, whether it's producing stuff, anything creative, putting stuff out there, whether it's something I feel like I'm putting out there, especially when I'm not performing as much. And I've been thinking a lot more about, when people say, what do you do? And anything you say seems to sort of leave out so much, but you can't give, how long have you got? Sit yourself down. And I've been really thinking a lot about, what purpose seems a very grand word, because I've got purpose. I've got my kids and I've got things like, that's kind of ticked in that way. But I've really been wondering whether, is it time to start bringing things into one or two things? But when I try and do that, I kind of miss the other stuff. So there's a lot of sort of existential stuff going on with a lot of performers around my age, I think, of going, actually, what do I need meaning, or do I just accept that it's just joy? Or and are you talking about that side of things, or are you? Yeah.
That's definitely what I'm talking about. And purpose is not a grand word in my book, quite literally in my book. It's that is what it is. It's an examination of what showmanship is. I've spent my whole life being a showman. And as you say, it's like I'm 50. I'm having my midlife crisis, I hope. Or maybe not quite high, maybe. But these are the things I am philosophically inclined. So I'm leaning in that direction. So this is then to look at what showmanship is. And then once you know what something is, you can then look a little bit more as to what is the purpose of this thing in society and for ourselves. Always that dual thing of what meaning does it offer me, and can I make sure that meaning transfers to the audience? And also just going through an in-depth exploration of the deeper aspects. I'm kind of looking at the showman as a sort of as an archetype, as a performer, somebody who has something to show to the audience, And so that starts at this thing. The showman is someone who faces the other way.
So, because there's a thing in magic, and I've kind of been through this a little bit recently, where that purpose. It's not just in magic, it's in stand-up comedy so much in the last few years, where it's not enough to do the show or be funny or show and share joy. It has to have a kind of a subcontext or a subflow or a sub-story or something with more meaning, in inverted commas. So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think some people are a little bit sniffy about that. Everybody's doing a thing with a story now, and I actually think it's a really nice kind of thing to also have. But I think I've kind of gone there and come back a bit, where I've written shows that have a lot of that are very personal, and kind of lost my way sometimes a little bit of going, actually it's okay to just do a really fun thing to share. And I was watching a video of you today, and it reminded me of that thing, that just joy of what you're doing. Oh, yeah. And nobody in the audience is sitting there going, this should have more meaning. What is it? They're just going, this is great, right?
Yeah. And this is part of it. We are entertainers. So first and foremost, fulfilling the contract, if we want to call it that, what we have, our obligation to the audience is to give them a good time. Most of the time, if they've paid tickets to come to see me, then I'm a little bit freer to do whatever I want, because they're there sort of expecting me. But most of the work that I do, I am there as part of something else, the corporate event, or I also do family shows. So then I'm there as part of a greater event. I'm working, for a long time. I worked in a show called La Clique that changed its name to La Soirée, and I did that for 12 years. And before that, I worked with Circus Oz. And before that, me and a bunch of people had a show called The Happy Side Show, that
Yep.
did crazy freak show stuff in a very positive angle. So if you're looking at just at like Happy Sideshow, our main goal was that we loved doing freak show stuff. We did sword swallowing and all these things, the dislocation stuff that I do now, and contortion and stuff, always with this bent towards physical comedy. And we all like that happy vibe, and that's where the name then came from, Happy Sideshow. So the philosophy of it was to kind of make these freakish things fun and fully acceptable to general public, so that you don't just perform at tattoo conventions and whatnot. So in that regards, it was like the philosophical idea of that was to celebrate these differences and find angles to make freak show stuff. And we had people who, like ourselves, who could do freaky things, but we also had people performing with us that were born different. Like so, and in those performances, we then tried to present the freakishness as something that is unique and special. Like when something is rare in the mineral kingdom, it's like you get a diamond or something and then it's really valuable. But sometimes within the human situation, if something looks different or behaves different or is different, then it gets shunned a little bit. We can be a little bit afraid of it. But the core thing was to have a good time. The aim of the game is to feel real good, was this sample that we used before the show, during the show of it. And that's the thing that first and foremost must be taken care of. That's what makes it entertainment. If you look at the in the dictionaries, all the definitions of what entertainment is, as wide as that might be, it always has this word of sort of enjoyment or joy or fun in it. So that's like that first thing. But my thing that I explore in the book and whatnot is that they will not sit there and when they're having a fun time and go, damn, I wish there wasn't anything meaningful in here. They will enjoy that more, but you need to fulfill that first part of the contract first. So, or else you sort of step into what I call like art is you're free to do whatever you want. If people cry or get angry or are bored or whatever, you're doing performance art and an act that we do that might take 5 minutes, lying on a bed of nails and getting a bowling ball dropped on you or whatever. If that is done over 5 hours, then it becomes sort of performance art. So you can screw with some of that immediacy of the enjoyment of it, which we have to work with. So that to me is a constriction, or like it's the framework that you fit in that you then can. But by taking that on, I'm thinking like I am an artist working in the domain of entertainment. So that's the first level. And then the second level is, so what can you then add of meaning to what you do, but always keeping the audience's experience in mind and making sure that it is, that they're having the best time. And to me, that is like when I saw Eugene Berger as a kid performing at the Magic Festival in Sweden, it's like, this stuff that is both, it's powerful magic and it pulls you in, but it also keeps having this air of meaning, even though he's doing card warp and gypsy thread, he's doing tricks that I knew of, but he does them in a way that they become something more.
I always think of Eugene Berger with that thing of the meaning that you put into it that is maybe additional to let's have a good time, has to be contingent, right, with either your character or who you are or what you're doing. And I think that's the difficult thing. There can be a real kind of clang sometimes where if you haven't looked into what character you're portraying as this joyful performer, then sometimes so I always think of, you wouldn't expect, Eugene Berger to come on and do the Cloak of Invisibility, and you'd be really upset if you saw Matt King walk on and do a spiritual kind of, gypsy thread.
Lights the little candle and sets up the ceremony and whatever. Yeah, but each one has that. And you see Ben Hart, and I feel like ritual and ceremony is like at the heart of what he does. Like everything that he does gets, or not everything, but a big flavor of it. So he's in that vein of it. Each one is like on slightly different ends of the of the spectrum, and all of it to me is equally valid. Whether you are doing, or like I just call it like a level 1, or like your main focus is just providing a good time. It's like when we're doing street shows, that is the most stripped back. So that's the example in the book that I sort of build everything up from. The idea of a market square where you go out, where there is none of it's just the performer facing the other way to a group of people, like the most basic performance situation.
It's funny, isn't it? When I was a street performer or a magician or whatever you do, the thing we get all the time is, how did you get into that, right? And we go, oh, here we go again, I've got to do my script. However, I'm really, for selfish reasons, I suppose, coming into I think everybody gets into street performing in a very different way. When I was at Covent Garden, everybody had a very eclectic, different backstory. It wasn't there's not a standard, I got a magic set as a kid thing. Nobody got a street performing book as a kid. And I have an inkling of your origin of getting into things. My friend Justin McGinley, Justin Sane, who just a beautiful guy, was along with Jay Gilligan, who got us in contact. Justin, talking to him the other day, we were talking about you, and I said, right, at the end of this phone call, I'm going to message Frodo again and get my shit together. But we were saying that, he was saying I'll ask him about his origin story. So I did look into it a tiny bit, but I stopped because I'd love to know your thing of going from not being a street performer to a street performer. First of all, what was that journey?
Yeah, so I started performing when I was 10, together with my father, my father was a magician. So I did shows with him from 1986 to 1996. I performed with my dad, my dad was an amateur magician, meaning that he always had another job. But from what he says, I can't fully remember, but we might do 120, 130 shows in a year. So we did a lot of shows. And that's where I started. And because we were living in one town, not really going so on tour, and I was in school and whatever, so we were like living in that same district, that made us all rounders. We needed to do whatever was required. Family entertainment, sometimes adult stuff, indoors, festivals, and also did some stuff on the street. Not stuff on the street so that we had to gather a crowd. We had to gather a crowd, but we didn't have to ask for money because it was always paid by whoever, like the city center management or whatever it was. Dad was good like that, business side of it. So I had performed quite a bit outside on the street and knew the different conditions. And then shopping centers, it's like similar. It's a street kind of situation where they're busy doing something else and you go inside. Had some experience. And then 1994, the torch, like it's the Winter Olympics right now, but it was the Winter Olympics in 94 as well, and it was going to be in Norway. And they did that torch relay run. And when that came through, I did a show without Dad and with another partner. We did a fire show as the torch thing was going and made a lot of money. And that was the first time I did it. And that was the first time when I did a street show, not with Dad and not paid in advance, where I asked for money. And
how old were you then?
I was 18, I guess.
Right, okay.
And around this time as well, like I went to London for the first time. And I remember sitting in Covent Garden, and I can't remember who it was that I watched, but I was seeing them, and they were telling jokes when they were asking for money, as opposed to just being earnest. And I was like, that's such a good idea. Now, of course, I know these are your money lines, and they have a way of asking for money. And I was like, that is such a good idea. I just say, this is what I do for support live street performing so it can happen in your town. That was all I said because I didn't know. And I remember sitting there going, like, discovering this clever hook of making them laugh whilst asking for money. And anyway, then I moved to Copenhagen in 1996, I think. And anyway, so there I worked. Lived in a flat and worked on the street, like a lot of people in Covent Garden does, and just went in every day, doing 2 or 3 shows, and that's, I think, when performing on the street, because I did it all the way up through wherever I lived. This was my main kind of income, doing street shows. So went to university, went to circus school, went to a circus course, but I could only afford to be there for 3 months at Cirque Media in Bristol.
Yeah.
Did that the year Stuart Goldsmith and Pedro Tocas. I don't know if you know, guys. But that was the same year. Pedro did the full year, but I couldn't afford that, so I just did 3 months. And that's the entirety of that education within this field anyway. So that's how I got into street performing. Then traveled around the Europe, and then in 98, I met some Australian guys. Famously for me or whatever, I met the Space Cowboy and Shep Huntley.
Yeah, Shane, Space Cowboy.
Yeah, exactly. So who were the part of that? They were the 2 other guys who was in the Happy Side show, and then there was a girl as well, Tiger Lil. So so I met them, and I had always been traveling around and staying at people's couches or whatever up until then. So when they came, I was like, "Oh, you guys got to come and stay at my house." And that night, I had a terrible situation with my girlfriend, and we broke up. And the next morning, Shep was like, "Oh, yeah, it didn't sound like you guys were doing so good in the other room. What are you doing now?" And I'm going, "Yeah, well, it's broken up." And we're going, and he goes, "Well, what do you say? You want to come with us to Amsterdam?" So then I just took my street show case and put a few other props in my backpack, and then went with them to Amsterdam. And so that was 98. And when 99 came, I went to Australia 3 times in 1999, performed and hung out. And that's the kind of short.
That's the origin.
Yeah.
I remember the Happy Side show very, very well, because I knew Shane and Shep. I had a mixed relationship with Shep. For those listening, in Covent Garden in the summer, the Australian contingent would come over, and I always kind of saw you as that, even though I knew you weren't Australian. I knew you, but we didn't cross paths that often. You would sort of come in and do a few shows, but I was there kind of daily, every single day. And so for people listening again, they would come over. They were all brilliant, right? It was just like they're all like really could work. Like, I was in Covent Garden. I got to a point of consistency, but it took a long time. But it's like, come over, work the season, then go back to Oz, work the season there, come back. And there was it's so funny seeing the distinctive styles of, the Australian guys with the sort of coloured hair and the big platform shoes, and some of the English guys would kind of try and mimic that a little bit to try and get in, as if that would increase the hats. It's like, and then Lucky Rich was obviously the kind of the legendary early adopter of that. But I always remember, I have a story I tell, which it's not that interesting, and but it's just about how I struggled at Covent Garden. It took me 3-4 years to be able to hold a crowd. I really struggled, and I remember coming off the pitch, bailing the show, which means that you didn't get to the end of it. And I went through a really bad period of bailing and insecurity. And most people were quite supportive. And Shep said to me, "Oh, here he is, Bailing Steve." He had this nickname for me. It kind of destroyed me. But the Happy Side show, the 2 things about it, I always remember how much I loved the atmosphere of it. I was a big Jim Rose fan back in the day. Huge Jim Rose. I went to see Jim Rose. Jim Rose Circus was very big in the UK because they were on the show The Word, which was this big thing. And it was huge. And so the Happy Side show was like a version of that. And the name of it really struck me. I thought it was one of the best names for a show like that, because there was a real kind of, it's usually grungy and dark, right, that stuff. It's fun, but it's stuff that I loved it. But then the fact you had this kind of twist on it, and the atmosphere was so good. It was electric, whenever you saw the Glastonbury.
We were all into dancing and all this, so the music was kind of big beat music with Chemical Brothers and Fatboy Slim flavor of music for a lot of the acts, but also presenting the sword swallowing with classical music to make it into something beautiful that stood out, and some rock and roll as well in the soundtrack. So it was all very upbeat and very high energy. I was playing kind of DJ, so we had 3 mini disc players, 2 with the different tracks that was going, and 1 just with samples and things that would freak show things that I sampled with recording from movies or recording from albums and recording, so that there was like a rich thing going on with what we were doing, live kind of mixing, with drum rolls and things that would be happening on the fly when stuff was happening. So and we were deliberately making it to sort of wanting it to have the feeling of a party. Going back to this idea of going, the first thing that the audience is after, without ever formulating it, but they want to have a good time. They don't want to, when they see most of us performers in the genre or style that we do, magic, juggling, acrobatics, street shows, all this, their first and foremost thing is they want to enjoy it and have a good time. They don't want to go out and go, it's interesting. This probably will give me an interesting feeling if I just stick with it for these 20 minutes. Like you need to get their attention and curate the time and attention that they give you in such a way that they're having a good time. And we built that a bit on a party. Like we wanted the whole thing to just build to a party and then have some calm moments in the end where some nice things get said, and then one more thing to blow their mind or whatever. But yeah, trying to make the freaky fun and funny was the vibe, and that party vibe was a big thing of it, and taking something that is, just like you say, by the very nature of what you do when you're doing a freak show thing, putting a spoon up your nose or you're swallowing a sword or whatever, claim, I'm going to do a dislocation now. Then the general feeling, if you're for the general public, is that I don't know if I want to see this. This is uncomfortable. So if you are a freak show performer and you lean into that and you're going, I'm going to do this, and it's so full on and it's so painful and it's going to scare you so much, you're just sort of pandering to what it already has. And we were then interested in taking these. We spoke about it as sword swallowing as a form of meditation, or like I was born different from disability with a lack of collagen in my joints and all this. I can do this rubber man stuff, and it's only 1 in 1,000 or whatever. So you go on the rarity and that, and going so you go, it looks really full on, but it's part of my body's natural vocabulary of movement and so, and I'm going to show you now, and I think it's really cool, and I hope you can find a way to enjoy it. So that kind of flavor, that is good. When I hear you say it, I'm going, that was the intent behind it.
Yeah. And I think some because of Jim Rose, a fair bit of that stuff started coming up. A bit like street performing, and this always fascinates me. And going back to when I first saw Lucky Rich, so people won't know he's not like a name in the magic community. He's probably a bigger name in the tattoo community now. But he, the most tattooed man in the world. But I worked Covent Garden for a good 2 years before he came back. He'd been somewhere, and he was known to earn the most money, have the biggest show. Nobody could touch him, right? Nobody could go anywhere near what he was earning. And people, it's not all about money, but it kind of shows the success. It kind of, there is a kind of a link on the street where you got to be good to get the money. There's no kind of, you're not pulling the wool over anybody.
It's a metric anyway. Yeah. It's like everyone's got shows of a certain size. You might be able to get the big crowd, but have you connected enough with them so that when you afterwards go, that was my art, here is my hat, then do they walk forward now on that big thing?
Queue up.
Do they come in and they can't get to it? Do they wait in line to come and put it in?
Yeah.
And he had that magic of having a charisma, which Shane Halpern, Space Cowboy as well, has that, where it's just like, it's a form of enchantment or so, that what they do is one thing, but somehow when they do it, when you see Lucky or Space Cowboy on their tall unis, this is why the tall unicycle show, when you juggle something on there, why that is like right on formula with what you do in a street show. And you think, oh, it's okay. It can feel generic when you see people do it. Like you go to a convention and you see 7 people do the linking rings. But every now and then somebody does the linking rings and you go, oh, this is why this is there. All of a sudden it grabs you with this power. Or like when Marlon Nilsson has an incredible way to do the linking rings that I really like.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, sorry, I was kind of
don't never apologize for that. That's why we're here. I'm excuse me. I'm always interested in that, and I've tried because the thing that happened is that Lucky Richie was then Lucky Rich came back, and I was like, right, I can finally see the show, and I was expecting something to. I don't know what I was expecting. And I watched this show and it was the strangest thing, right? It was, on one level, like you say, a generic show. I mean, there were juggling tricks at the beginning that were really standard, basic tricks. The jokes weren't brilliant. I wouldn't even say but there was something, right? And that's, and I suppose in a way that I'm not comparing the two situations, but there's always a time in stand-up or in any performance when the show starts working and you don't really know why it's working. You're kind of doing all the same stuff. And we know it's about kind of being relaxed and all that. But when I was consistent and all of a sudden I wasn't because I stopped enjoying it, the audience could smell it and it just became this kind of thing. I always go back to seeing Lucky, seeing those performers, and there's a load of British performers like that as well, of going, what is that thing? It's more than just being relaxed. I don't know what it is, and it's a beautiful thing to be drawn into something, almost like watching a movie that you're watching and you're sort of thinking, this isn't about anything, nothing's happening. Yes, the acting's good, but that's a given. But for some reason, I can't stop watching this thing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it has something which is like. Calling something authentic is like it doesn't. It's as nebulous as saying it's a mystery. But there's something about when you watch Lucky Rich go out there and he does his initial juggling. What's that? I think maybe started a show as like super early on. He takes 7 balls and then he goes, "Oh, I'm going to show you this, just so you know." That this is worth watching or something like that. And then he juggles not a particularly long or strong at the time version of juggling 7 balls, but he does. And he juggles 7 balls and then he puts it down, even if it's just like a flash and a half of it, and he puts it down. That's just so that you know that we got the skills here, kind of. And then he does, but somehow what he did was registered to the audience as being truly him. And if the jokes were kind of not the greatest writing, or the delivery is not like based on an incredible understanding of comedy, it's just still this very powerful persona delivering these jokes, and somehow the lack of perfection or whatever it is that like when you watch it seems like that's how this guy goes and he doesn't care. And somehow that sort of thing feels to him like it's genuine, and I deliver it like this, not because I don't know any other way, but because that's exactly how I want to deliver it. There's something about that sort of confidence and faith in himself, and that I mean, I couldn't repeat what he did at all. But his way was also not the only way. Like Pepe Mime would do shows that were, well, you know, not in the style that Lucky did, but also that were enormous, filling up that whole piazza there, like setting the stage so big because he was doing visual stuff. As like, remember being at the Draw in Edinburgh and Pepe, or like going like talent. Because they were arguing about amplifiers, which at the time when was his late about
his line every morning. His line every morning. You're going to say it.
Yeah. It's like talent speaks louder than any amplifier, and there's so much talent in the world and so very little here.
At the draw every morning, we'd have a draw at 8:15 in Covent Garden. They made it later now, which I think was a terrible mistake. But we'd all be there feeling like shit, like gone out the night before, and Pepe especially. Rest in peace. He died recently, as you know. And it became a tradition. So we'd do the draw. He'd criticise a few people and be himself. And then when we all sort of left to go for breakfast in our different places, you just hear him go, so much talent in the world, so very little here. Every day for like years. When he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing. But when he performed, when Pepe performed, when Lucky performed, or when Shane and Shep performed, you come out and you see these characters that have this sort of confidence in themselves. And I find that there's this, the way that I think of it, even if it doesn't explain it more, is that the audience reads and understands a resonance, an authentic resonance between what lives inside you and how you behave and how you look. So when Shep had his hair short and dyed into a smiley face, as he did in the beginning on top, or like the Australian with the big goggles and the big platform shoes, if you adopt that, you look, and it's not who you actually are, then it works against you, as opposed to. So there is something there about whether you're pulling this off and when you feel like you're living your best life and feel like you are expressing yourself truly, that the audience reacts to. That does all that stuff as much as that. Those are thoughts that I have about it, but it doesn't explain it. Because if you were to help somebody, I talk to people how to create acts or shows in particular, and then it's not an easy thing to do. Then you have to get on the floor and actually work and work out what that is. Because everything that's general is it's helpful. And it's helpful if you recognize something specific in it. But any general class will offer generalities. But then what happens when you generally give an advice is different from when you're working specifically on your act or on your character. So because you can work on your character, or you can work on your material, or you can work on the structure of said material, or the structure of the reveals of the character, so. There's so many levels, and you can work on that as the whole show, or you can work on an act, or you can work on it. But I guess I'm talking about that now, because that's sort of when you're writing a book that is about showmanship, about performance, and about what it means to dedicate your life, for want of a better phrase, to performance, meaning that's the thing that you have done throughout your life. When you do that, it's like, when you say something, it is by nature, it has to be general. And just like you said about when people ask you, who are you? Well, as soon as you say anything, that thing is less than what you actually are. And I think that this is a feature of reality itself. Every time you say something, when you speak something into existence, what something is, then that thing is not the same. The map is not the same as the territory. The territory is endlessly rich, but on the map, it's just a bunch of circles that shows the incline of a mountainside or whatever. But when you go there, it's endlessly rich. And language has that as a flaw, that it is a separate thing describing what it is or whatever. And I struggle with that idea when I'm writing the book, when you keep having to write sort of general ideas and then making examples about myself or about other performers or whatever, so that you can see it manifested in one way. But still, there's nothing that beats that one-to-one. It's just someone helping, like me, looking, and then someone else walking out onto the stage and you're looking at it. Because this question of why did it work for Lucky Rich? Why did it work so well for Pepe? And why does other people, when they juggle a little bit in the beginning and then get on a tall unicycle and juggle, or do a bunch of following, like when spectators, or when just shoppers or whatever are walking down the street, and the mime artist or whatever walks behind them and mimics them or does things, which is sort of the core of the beginning of Pepe's show. Like, what is it that when one performer does a bit of following in the beginning, it gets 30 people stopping, And when Pepe starts doing it, he gets 1,000.
Yeah.
And what is it that gives the lucky rich a hat that most people have trouble lifting because it's so filled with coins and whatever, and other people do well and make £100 or whatever, which is still great for 40 minutes work or whatever. But like, what is that? Where's that magic? And that somehow you can say general things, but the real thing is still just there, almost like a mystery, even after you've explained it all.
Yeah, which is why it's great. Which is why I almost like talk, because there isn't an answer, right? We know that, but there is. I think it's interesting, and I don't want people listening to this thinking, "Well, I'm not a street performer." This isn't. This is totally relevant to all levels of art, whether it's writing, performance. Writing is a really interesting one, and I think it does come down to, as one of the things, the confidence you mention, but not. That can be confused with arrogance sometimes, I think, and they both do come together sometimes, but not at the same time on stage. But there's a kind of... I saw it more when I went to Australia to perform. I saw people perform like Justin and my friend Matt Adams, who I'm still in touch with them both. And they were very different performers, and Shep was a very different performer. And actually, Shep is a very different performer to Shane and you, even though it was easy to kind of go, the Australian people were there, back then. But there's... In Australia, there seemed to be a little bit more of a positive vibe around acceptance of each other. And I don't know how this might have just been where I was in Melbourne and in Darwin where I worked and a bit in Sydney. But in Covent Garden, I found it wasn't outwardly critical. I mean, there was Pepe slagging everybody off in the morning, but that was just it's like your old granddad kind of having a moan. But it was just like but there wasn't much in the way of, other than your very close friends, in the way of a feeling of positive feedback either. There was not your mate would go, great show, well done, but it wasn't. Whereas in it seemed a more warm, and I don't mean just physically, and with temperature in Australia, and the fact that I think you could get out there most days and do it. That's what we do. So you had that time to develop your character without thinking, I'm going to develop my character, and there was definitely that was when my show started working, was when I went to Australia. I couldn't get it working. I went to Australia, and Matt, my friend, was the first person ever to come up to me and said, that's one of the funniest shows I've seen. It was hilarious. And at that moment, I just went, oh, I'm all right then, am I? And he went, fucking great. And my show just went like that. And when I came back to Australia, I was consistently good for a bit, and I lost friends because of it. People were like, people didn't like it. I was meant to be the shit one. Yeah. And then it went the other way when it was no longer me. The opposite happened, right? So that was time to kind of, hang it up. But yeah, I think that it's such a pure form of, there is no book to tell you how to street perform. There might be a couple that attempt it, but the immediate feedback of that daily work, like you said, you can't put it into words. You don't have to write some copy to send to your audience before they turn up at Covent Garden or Cirque du Soleil or Southgate or whatever. And that's such a valuable insight. And of course, when we start working the stage, we get less. Well, not unless you're lucky enough to get a contract, you get less time to work on anything new.
Good afternoon, fellow conjurers, and welcome to Volume 1 of my lecture tapes. I'm going to kick off with a nice little effect I call the Kings of the Ancient. I think it will play well to a high school prom or like a works do. Can you be quiet now, please? I'm doing my program.
You're working with Cirque du Soleil now, and I suppose back to the Happy Side Show and all that stuff, when you're getting that consistency. So a cliche though it is, I'm sure, I'm interested to know not just how you got the gig on that level, but your own internal journey as well as the thing from being a street performer to working a more consistent. I suppose it started with a Happy Side Show, but being confident enough to put yourself in the way of those kind of gigs or those kind of people.
Yeah, late 90s, I was actually in another freak show before, so following hot on the trot of having a breakup in the night and next morning leaving with two guys that I literally met that day before. I then went to Edinburgh, and there I met a bunch of people who were doing a freak show called the Kamikaze Freak Show, where Amy Saunders, I don't know if you remember her. She was,
I was at circus school with Amy. In '96, we were at Circus Space together, and Amy sat next to me practicing sword swallowing while we were learning about the history of theatre or something, putting a ruler, like a 30 centimetre ruler down her throat in class to learn this thing. Because she didn't know, Amy, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying, and this was 96 or whatever it was really talented, but she didn't have that thing of, I'm a juggler. She was just interested in all of it. And when she started doing that, you could tell, and this might just be me, post-rationalising, but you could tell that she found this. It's like, I'm going to do that. And then she was breaking world records, and it was so amazing. And then with Leclerc and to see what I could always see there, and I'm not saying I'm not saying it in a patronising way, but I loved Amy so much at Circus Space, and it was lovely to see someone that you care a great deal for really finding themselves. Because I don't think, like most of us, we didn't have that when we were there.
No, but it's if you're talking about someone and they were exactly the same in 1996 as they were now, then it also shows that you can say, oh yeah, they knew from so early on who they were, but as well you'd go, they haven't actually developed, and she has just gone from that person to having her own show, and then a permanent show in Vegas, and then another resident show here in Vegas, and she's got shows on cruise ships, and it's like where she's just directed and taken the concept that she's made and placed it into, is it Virgin Atlantic? Anyway, it's like it's just unbelievable what she has done. But she was performing then in that show and a bunch of other people, so that was the first show that I was in. And in late 90s into the early 2000s with the Happy Side Show and whatever, I was making the transition to perform indoors where you need a different kind of material. I think first time I played Glastonbury in 1999, I remember playing the outdoor circus stage. And we were supposed to do whatever it was, half an hour or something. And I'm like, it's so hard to fit it in because my street show is 40 minutes. And then you go out onto that stage and you go, hang on, I'm just quickly going to put my costume on. And you're sitting now in a stage setting. And you go, this is normally, that just kills when you're getting semi-naked just in your underpants in the middle of the street. It's a bit of a thing. If you were doing it in the middle of the field of Glastonbury, which I also did, the street shows out there, then that also excites people somewhat, that someone's getting naked. But then when you're doing it on the stage and your shtick is, I'm just going to put my costume on, they're all going like, why aren't you ready? Like, it's because I have dreams about this now, like that my music comes on when I'm here at Cirque and that I'm not ready to go on. And there I'm like living through that. And then that first time when I did it, it's like, oh gosh, this isn't actually material in this venue. And like this sort of having this epiphany about what is material on the street, because building an audience and stopping people and turning them from being random bystanders to being an audience, that transformation is a huge part of what a street show is and what your actual material is. Like you have special material, special jokes, special structures and rhythms and recurring things or whatever it is that you do in that beginning, which necessarily needs to be semi-improvised and a bit sort of some of it is more drawn out because you're literally kind of stopping people. So that isn't material when you're indoors. So I was making that transition sort of in this end of the 90s, and I was supporting my transition by doing street shows. I think that first tour that we did with the Kamikaze Freak Show, did a month of touring or whatever, and we think we got 40 quid a day, 40 pounds a day for doing that show. So it's barely enough for anything. But at the time, it felt like this is the dream, driving around in an old ambulance filled with bricks that we would smash on because we didn't know if we could get them in Holland. So we brought them from England when we went there, from Scotland. And like with a hermaphrodite from New York City and a sword swallower from Wales, and me doing the Rubberman stuff, and John Kamikaze, the crazy leader of the outfit, doing a sort of pincushion human, the Prince of Pain. And that felt to me like I'm living the dream here. This is so exciting. I just read Catherine Dunn's Geek Love on a recommendation from Amy Saunders, actually.
Yeah, she always talked about it.
Yeah, on awesome book for anyone who is wanting to explore the depths of what the freak show is, and it's a really deep book. Catherine Dunn is an awesome author. Then meeting these Australian guys also changed my street show and changed the performer that I was, because they're confident of doing a circle show. When I met them in Copenhagen, I was performing at there were sort of two pitches. One big one where you could do a circle show, and one other one where you could do it against the wall of a building. So I did a half circle show when I met them. And then when I left and on the way up to Edinburgh after being in Amsterdam, we stopped in York and I was doing my first full circle shows. And of course, like the hat just doubled because you now had people on the back as well. It takes a little while to get used to working towards the back of you. But all of this later on came to serve me extremely well when I was performing in La Clique, for instance, and for 12 years, where we were on a small round stage in the center of a Spiegel tent. So those changes was also when we then did the Happy Side show, the kind of material that you can do, which is, we're getting back to that, what I mentioned before, of when they have bought tickets to come and see you, then they expect a different level of material, or that you can take them further. We could do things in our freak show, indoor show, that would not be suitable on the street. You could make atmospheres that are more calm or get more extreme. If you structure it right, you can get the audience to come with you into more extreme territory by how you've built it up. And you can do that on the street, but all of this is amplified inside. And I made that transition through, in the beginning, you're just saying yes to everything that I could indoors. And that just changed the material that I had. Then you realize that, okay, this tennis thing that I'm doing where I'm squeezing through 2 tennis rackets on the street, that lasts X amount, and then it's actually half that time when you're indoors or something, where you realize, oh, once I cut out all the faff, it's shorter or whatever. So then I was doing that, did the Happy Side show, and then I was invited to be in Circus Oz.
Yeah, that's a big thing, right? People won't know in this country how Circus Oz almost, before I saw Circus Oz or knew what Circus Oz was, I just thought it was a group of people, like almost, and then it's a big deal, right? Circus Oz, it's a big gig.
Yeah. It was. It doesn't function anymore quite like it did in the beginning, but before they were the first kind of big new circus. What the flagship of that is Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil started in 1984, I think, and they started in the late 70s in Australia, mixing circus skills with theater, and so there was like street dish kind of elements to it, and they were kind of radicals in there, where they had political opinions that they were spouting in the show or putting in, but they were actually a real circus. Then at the time, it was so early that the original crew of Circus Oz wanted to buy a big top, and nobody wanted to sell it to them, because at that point the traditional circus was holding on to that. So they bought the canvas sewing machine and sewed their own big top that they then took on tour. So that's cool. So it was awesome to be invited to be with them, and that really was a huge change. And my act was quite long. The tennis act, that was my main kind of act, is physical comedy, slapstick mixed with me squeezing through the rackets, because it's a comedy act first and foremost, and me going through the rackets doesn't do justice to what it is that's happening in the thing. Yeah, it's I fall off the stage, and a lot of slapstick stuff in the style of George Carl or whatever. But being invited to be in that show and playing around Australia and doing all that, and then we in 2004 or something, when we then went and we played Royal Festival Hall down on South Bank, which is a big 3,000 seater, and we're doing all flying trapeze and all that, and then I came out and did a 13-14 minute version of my act, and during that run, the response that I got in the papers, also because the UK, Britain has an incredible understanding, I think, of physical comedy, of slapstick, of silliness, like from Monty Python and whatever. Like, but there was the first time where in several reviews they used the word genius to describe what I was doing, because they could really see it, and I hadn't. Because we'd always been performing at fringe festivals and at underground things, and we're doing a freak show, so it's always that sort of odd outlier. And we did 4 seasons at the Sydney Opera House. So it wasn't that we weren't like mainstream. We were doing all the kind of gigs that we could, but then being taken out of the freak show context, placed into a circus, playing the role kind of the clown or whatever, all of a sudden what I did had this spotlight on it that it never had before. And that really felt like this incredible validation as well, going from playing the venues that were like 400 people, 300 people maybe as a thing, to playing 3,000. That was this huge leap, and what that did to me in that time was amazing. And then I joined La Clique, and the guy there said, you got to make the act 10 minutes. And then I made it 12 and cut the music to 12 minutes. And it has stayed then 12 minutes from 2006 until now. Yet, even though the act has always been full, completely full, so that people were booking me for it, it is now, I would say, there's an additional 50% of jokes and material inside the thing that was already full from before. And that process of working on one thing, polishing that thing until it becomes so full, that never ends. I'm still now developing. So we're just talking to there's a stand-up in the show as well, and I was talking to him and Adam Kukla, a juggler and funny clown guy. These two about, there's a new thing that just started to happen. Something about because I'm actually quite bald, but I have long hair at the back. And the reveal of that now in the show is, for some reason, there's something going on there. And I'm just working out, why does that now get a gasp that it didn't used to get before? And I'm realizing it has to do with the way, after the headband initially pops off my head, I'm wearing a tennis outfit and a headband. After that initially pops off my head, the way that I now put it on, that really gives this reveal of my baldness. It's just it literally comes down to the way that I'm putting the headband on. And now and that has been there latent for decades. Oh, well, in the decades, I haven't actually been bald for that long, but it's been there, like just under the surface, ready to happen. It's always gotten a little response, but now, 27 years after I started doing it, I find this new way of doing something that all of a sudden has this room here, which is like a 1,300 seater. Then you can hear it in the room, and it's just me putting my headband on again. So these little thing, that not that is anything, this particular example is significant in any way, other than that it just happened over these last few days, where why is this getting the response, trying to work out why it is so I can harness it. And now I know this little detail will go with me into all the other venues I will go in, but this particular venue here has afforded a new gag, so there's a new strong moment in something that was already happening. So
I want to stick with that, because there's a couple of things you said there. One is that feeling of constant curiosity. I think that sometimes I find I lack, and I wonder why I'm not excited about what I'm doing. And then it's usually because of stuff that's going on, externally, and it kind of takes you away from the flow that you're in when you do your stuff. And I get so excited when that comes back, that curiosity, and kind of not just sitting there working on it, you know, with bits of paper, but in performance, and always looking for the little bits. And I was talking to my friend Jack Rhodes, who did very well on Britain's Got Talent 2 seasons ago, and I saw his show the other day, and it's really imaginative. It's really him, right? And we were talking after his show, and he's so curious about what did you think of that, not in an egotistical way, not just to make the show better, but those tiny little things that you need that validation for sometimes, and it seems like they're not joined, but I think they are. You mentioned from the time when, what I was hearing, your confidence grew. You had confidence, obviously, as a street performer, you have to have, but in putting yourself into those situations, which many of us fear, because if that spotlight is on us, it's like we'll get caught out, right? We can't get away with spending 10 minutes saying, here are my shoes, here's my juggling clubs, you know, all that thing. Yeah. I was laughing so much when you said that, because we've all made that mistake on stage when we go from the street. But that validation, which I think so many of us lack if we start working, as I do a lot of time now when I'm doing a corporate event, it's me. I turn up, I do the thing. Yeah, you get the validation from the people saying that was great or whatever, but when you're working and collaborating, which I've had a huge lack of until recently, then you can kind of, that muscle doesn't get, it's the wrong way to put it, I think. You don't get that thing of feedback, you know. Audience feedback's different because you know your thing works, but somebody that will give you feedback critical in a good way or not. And I think when that's happened to me, it's just that my confidence, like, you know, Matt saying to me in Melbourne, oh, that was great, yeah, and talking about it rather than just, oh yeah, how big's your hat, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important. Magic, there's a lot of, yes, there is a lot of support, and I think you can say this about any culture, subculture, whatever, but there's also a lot of jealousy, and if someone does well, there'll be people commenting, and that support can create careers, right? And it's so important, I think, if you're working alone, and a lot of magicians work alone because that's the nature of what we do, we kind of sit there with our cards, is if you have a chance to be that person, be it, because they might not have a big crew of people that are going to help them with their show, and it just highlights that so much to me when, with Amy, who we were talking about, that, and I don't know whether this is just from watching her success, is just working with other people, just collaborating, and people being supportive and lovely and great, and you know, saying come and join us, you know, after you split up with your girlfriend or whatever. And it's lovely to hear that, the power of that. You know, I'm not saying that's all it was, but
no, but it's a huge part. It's also, and those are like the pivotal moments as well, like when somebody says to you, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen, that was so great. Like you get that validation from someone, and sometimes that's enough. Just like if somebody calls you Bailing Steve, then that has the other effect, especially if it's people that you already know or you know, have some measure of, because on the street it's like you respect those people who can go out there and just hammer out the show when there's not such a good day, or when it's windy, or all those things that works against you when you're outside, and then they can, so there's just this respect. And I guess I had that respect, and I, like Pepe, for instance, somebody who could make somebody's life quite difficult.
Yeah.
He loved me from the first time he saw me, gave me props out of his own case, going, this would be good for you, you should work with this. It's like your face is your whole act. Like, you don't need all this stuff that you're doing. I'm doing some Diablo or whatever. Like, you got to focus more on just you and doing these things. And I remember those key moments when somebody who you look up to, and you've heard that this dude, you got to be careful with this guy, and then when they accept you, like how you just grow as a person, because they afford you to be yourself differently. Like I've always been doing my thing, and I've been doing it, but getting that confirmation from a peer that you look up to, or someone else that has it, that it can really just because that confidence thing does not equate to arrogance. I think one of the things that drew me to Shane and Shep as well is that you get the person up to help you, and at the end of the show, this is one of the things that we sort of spoke about. It's like then that person needs to be a hero. There needs to be no joke that puts this dude down, because the reason why a volunteer is coming up that don't want to come up and help you is that they think that you're going to make them feel uncomfortable. Just like when somebody says they're going to swallow a sword, you expect that it makes you uncomfortable. But if you can transform that experience to have their to change it from being something that you expected to be negative to being really positive, then that volunteer will go down and go, that was just awesome. And I think there's something in there like that drew me to those guys.
When you said that about Pepe, it's a really interesting thing. I think people get hung up on that they're going to be respected by other performers for being good. Right now, Pepe was always lovely to me. He would be very critical in a jokey way about my show, because my show was a generic fucking whatever, but it worked. But I think it was because, in the same way that I remember doing when I did stand up for a year, and I apologise for people listening, I've probably told this story before, but I went to Up the Creek. I did stand up for a year, and it was one of those things, if I was on form, I was improvising, I was fine, but I had no material really. And I was too nervous to have material. I was used to getting my clothes on slowly in the street. And but it would be lovely sometimes. And I went to Up the Creek, and Up the Creek was known to be full of hecklers. They would go to heckle. It was a brutal thing. And I died on my ass, big time. And I walked off early. And Malcolm Hardy had been quite funny, but unkind to people that were dying on their ass that night. And most of us were. And I came off, and I kind of waited for my big slating from him. And he said, he was all right, wasn't he? Give a big round of applause. And that was it. And I wasn't all right. I was shit. But I think it was because I just kind of accepted it. And I'm not bigging myself up. I'm just using it in the way that I think that with Pepe, I was so insecure that I never thought I'm going to go in there and I'm going to smash it. And I think because of my insecurity, I was quite a nice person. I was too scared to be anything but. And he was always really lovely. So I think that my insecurity came later, and my show was so hard because I got hung up on that thing of the show's got to be good. It's got to be fucking good. I've got to get respect. When actually the respect doesn't really come from that, because I lost a lot of it when my show did get good. So it's and I think that, but that can snowball that insecurity if you think it's all about that. And then the big paradox, of course, is when you stop worrying about it as much, you get that calm you talk about, and it starts happening, and it's harnessing that and making sure that doesn't catch you again, I think. Yeah.
But that thing is just an ongoing thing, and you keep rediscovering it or so. And of course, it's this, when I'm saying that British papers wrote that I was a genius or whatever, it's not to toot my own horn, but it's to also go, like, it was the first time when, like you say, like a third party, not just a performer, goes, nice one, that was a good show, or whatever, that looked like a big hat, or you sold 100 tickets to your show indoors or whatever, and you feel like you've made it. It was just another step where you get this validation where you go, oh my Lord, my actual this thing that I've been working on for so long now is starting to find a form that is bringing you to another level or whatever. So then these things, me saying Pepe liked me, or you saying that the dude said that was all right, like, because they're so small moments, but it's also, those are the moments that often, that really, like, I cite these things. I used to do shows in Copenhagen, as I said, and there the Pepe of that place was David McSavage.
David McSavage, I didn't know him very well, but I know David McSavage,
So he's another one that could be brutal when he really felt like, if I can just break someone down and take a spot on the street, then there'll be more shows for me. And him too saw something in what I was doing. At the time, I was doing a contortion act with handcuffs, where I was doing a contortion thing with handcuffs on, and in the end I stood on a little stool and juggled a knife, a torch and an apple and ate it with the handcuffs on, and did an escape thing with some people out. So what I did was kind of unusual, but it's like, is it the fact that I had a show that was not getting on a unicycle so that I was original enough, or was it just that I was a good person, or what? Well, like, who knows? But whatever it was, that this guy saying after I come off doing a show, going like, the thing about you is that I know that you want to be funny during your act, and we can feel it. So you're looking for it and everything. And at the time, I was like, it was such a accurate assessment of what it was that I was doing, and it happened after because I did most of my shows at that time with a partner. We did a juggling act together, me and him, and then for some reason I was doing a one-off show, because he was gone, and I did a show, and McSavage saw it, and it's like that encouragement that you get from this person that you look up to and are a little afraid of, because they can tear you a new one if they think they can take your spot or whatever, start up the show next to you and blow you away or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's important, these things, and it's good for those people who are in the industry and in magic as well. Because of course we all, Morrissey's song, we hate it when our friends become successful, and it's like, no, we don't, of course, but there's a part of you also that goes, damn, why did they get that job and me not? Why can't I do it? I'm as good as this guy, or I can do those magic tricks. I also do ambitious card, and so why am I not invited to do this close-up gig or whatever?
Yes, exactly.
We can't help but compare ourselves, and it's a battle that you can only lose, especially with social media. There's always somebody who's doing, like you say, you do a bit of stand-up, you do mentalism, you do juggling, and then so that means that you can find other mentalists that are better than you, other stand-up, other jugglers, other teachers.
That's a
like,
great
every
point.
one of those, you can find them that are better than you at any of those things. So if you only did one thing, I'm the guy that only does the eating the apple juggling thing, and I'm in the best in the world for doing that, then maybe you're a little bit more protected because you don't feel inadequate in so many directions. But when you do many things, then you can endlessly, always, we're actually just in competition with ourselves. And when you're winning that's when you're winning in life and in the shows, I think.
There's the quote for the podcast. There's the title of the podcast. Lovely.
All I am is a big pudding that sat here. All I am is a big pudding that sat here. All I am is a big pudding that sat here. Smiling inanely. Smiling inanely. Smiling. Smiling. Smiling inanely. There's people in Piss Alley who looks like they're in much better form than you are.
So tell me about your life now then. Tell me about your day-to-day. And
Day-to-day.
You're living in Vegas?
Yeah, that's right. So I lived in Vegas, and here, I worked in Vegas before. I worked first time I was here in 2013 and 14, and then I was here in 18, 19, and into 20 when the pandemic came. So then I left here. Then I was working with Spiegelworld in a show called Opium, and before that in Vegas Nocturne back in 2013, 14. And when the pandemic came, I decided to go back to Norway. And when the pandemic finished and they started up again over here a year or so after, when the show opened again, I decided not to go back to Vegas, to live in Norway instead. I live near my parents and do more, like my parents and family and all that. They're getting no younger. And my daughter also, it turned out to be an extremely excellent thing for her to go to school and have her now just recently teenage years. She's just become a teenager, and to have that in Norway as opposed to in Vegas, in America here. So that worked out to be just really good. It's like people talk about the life-work balance, and I think of that as because I call myself a showman, and I use this title, showman, but I also think of that word just that has the work and life in it. It's got the show aspect of it, and then it's got the man aspect, man as in mankind, the human that is there. And that aspect of my life really opened up a lot when we then moved home. And so that the much richer kind of family life. Previously, for the first 8 years or so that my daughter was alive, me and my wife and my daughter was on tour, permanently on tour. So my daughter didn't know any other life than being on tour, going around first with La Soirée and then with whatever else I was doing. So so that's the what went on then, and now I do then a few years later. This is the third year that I'm here in Vegas. One of Cirque's shows called Mad Apple at New York Casino. They decided to change their format with the comedy of the show, and rather than having one person that was always in the show, which it had been before, it was what's his name, Greenbaum?
Harrison.
Harrison, because I kept thinking Jonathan. I knew that was wrong, but Harrison Greenbaum, I don't know him, but he was there for a few years, and then for whatever reason they maybe he was doing something else, I don't know, but anyway they decided that they wanted to rotate the comedy spot, which is an unusual thing. This show is like it's an adult version of Cirque, and people speak English, which I speak in my act, because a lot of the golden age pillars of Cirque du Soleil over here, like Mystère and O, they don't use language, English language, and so they use a different kind of invented language, and so they have the whole world. So this made this show possible for me, and the fact that they changed the format, that they wanted to have kind of, I think that first year they divided it up roughly into just 2-month slots, and there were 6 performers that did that. So sort of rotated around. So they invited me, actually, bringing Amy Saunders. She was consulting with Cirque, because she is over here like the queen of the odd and the specialty acts and all of that, because she's been doing her show over here, and she did she's done those kinds of shows that attract those kinds of performers, and she has those contacts. And she was the one that suggested me for this thing, and then it turned out that the producers of that, which are the Simon Painter and Neil, not dropping his last name, but they had, at least Simon had just seen me recently. They are the ones who are The Works, that company who has The Illusionists and Circus 1903. Yeah. So they had Simon had actually seen me really recently before that. So then that got, in that confluence of things where I was suddenly on their radar, I was invited to come back. And I never considered that I could be in Cirque du Soleil, because with the acts that I do, it's always this entertainment by unease. Mm-hmm. I announce in the beginning of the show that I'm going to do a dislocation. It takes 7 minutes before I do it, and it's just there as this undercurrent, but it's there as this, I don't think I want to see that, but over those 7 minutes, they like me so much that they accept that thing, whatever. But I was not thinking that was what Cirque was after, and also I'm always speaking in my acts, or most of in those times when I make a silent act, then as I perform it 100 times, I drift towards talking, because then there are more laughs and more points of interaction. So it just becomes, they like it when I speak. Anyway, I didn't think that I would end up in Cirque du Soleil, but all of a sudden, this gig has arrived that is just unbelievable. The tagline of Mad Apple is used to be not your usual Cirque show, but now it is Cirque du Soleil's Wild Child. So they are after something that is a little bit edgy, a little bit different, a bit weird, and I just fit into that show like a glove. It's just so excellent, like a hand in a glove. I don't know what it means if you say that. I fit into the show like a glove.
Yeah, you fit like a glove. Yeah. No.
So No, it fit like a hand in a glove. Is that what it is? Or like I fit like a glove into a show. It's like fitting like a shoe into a classroom. I don't know what my metaphor is there, but so great. And I also didn't. And they want short contracts, which is kind of unusual for Vegas. Once you've gone through the process of getting visas and getting organized and contracts and all of this sort of stuff, you just want them to stay there and do that thing every night because know that they work. But now that the concept that the show has is a rotating, now it's sort of settled on those performers. So it's not so much change anymore. It's kind of those performers that are rotating, that they had their consultants and they have the stuff, and some people have come and gone and some of us have stayed on, and doing it a lot with Nick DeFat actually.
Nick, lovely Nick.
So great. So he's a good friend and I'm spending a lot of time with him here as one of the things that he is one of the people that makes this really awesome. I met him performed and lectured at this magic convention in Denmark, and there I met him and just really hit it up from the first time he came into the green room. Him and Morten Christensen, who is two-time
lovely human being as well.
So he's so great. So I landed right in there, and Charlie Caper was there as well at that festival, and Mario, the maker magician, he was also there. So like it really felt to me like I just landed into. They had a panel during the convention where they like talking about the future of magic, and I was like, I don't know, I have just landed at this festival here, and for me, Nick and Morten and Mario and Charlie, like this is the future of magic happening now, not because they've just started, but because of like Charlie's new show, unbelievable magic show with all the robots and all that. Like it's so anyway, I met him, and then through Nick, Mac King heard my podcast, and then Mac liked it so much that he sent an email to me about it. And then I asked him, oh, that's very nice. Would you like to be on the podcast? And then he came on the podcast. And now I get to spend time with him as well. So him and Nick, that's like been this additional life-changing thing. And going with Nick, because Nick knows everybody. So then I'm like, I just meet everybody here. And so in the magic community, because previously it's not fully, there's no big crossover between the kind of vaudeville or cabaret or circus and magic. Sometimes they are quite different, but the reason why I talk about showmanship is because I have done juggling and I've done all these different things. And when I do my own 1 hour shows, I do a whole range of things. Magic is always one of those things. And in my family shows, it's 80% magic that I do.
Right.
So I have a strong foot in each camp, but I'm kind of interested in the performer. So coming here and having then all these circus performers that I know from Cirque or whatever, people do clowning or people who do all crazy things, and all the people from Spiegel World that I was here with before, and people that were in La Soirée or whatever that have ended up here. So it's so I feel like that's my life over here. And then I'm doing writing on this book that will be finished soon, so that in my 50th year I will publish my book that will be the kind of companion piece to the podcast for all of those who are interested in exploring more meaning in their work and also in their life, as full-time performers. So that's
my kind of book. That's I can't wait. There's a lot of, and I'm glad actually, because as Jay put me in contact with you, I was in contact with Nick and we were going to do a podcast, and then we didn't get around to it. He got busy, but no, you have to carry the torch. You have to carry the torch to Nick and Matt King and Mario. They're next. So after this, I'm going to message Nick again.
Yeah. He's just about to go to England, actually. He's going to Blackpool.
Right. Oh, is he? Oh, I'm not going. I might try and go Sunday. But
go.
Yeah, I've got gigs the first 2 days. Yes, that would motivate me to go to Blackpool on Sunday. Listen, we got to do it again. I want to do it again.
Totally.
I could talk to you forever. So, is there any?
I have the same. No, just when I on my podcast too. Nick is one of the guys that comes on regularly, and Jay is in practically every episode. Not really, but yeah, he's kind of my co-host, Jay Gilligan. Anyway, yeah. I find that in the beginning you got to do a conversation where you're talking about who this person is. Because when it's like now, when we're sort of meeting formally first time here in this, you sort of checking each other out. I've been listening to your podcast and hearing you talk, so you shine through in it because it's conversations. And I find that I often have that first episode, which I introduce the person to the world or whatever, and the conversation goes well and they are inclined to do it. Then you can get into different stuff. That in the beginning, when you're telling the big picture all the time, because of course, like how exactly did you get the contract? How did this happen? And what are you actually doing? And when you're creating, what is the actual thing? Because you can always break it down into finer details. Yeah. And the first episodes are always sort of big in scope.
Yeah, because it's I want to get in that. You know, it's and the lovely thing, you know, we'll close off in a minute, but I think that the beautiful thing about this, and I'm so glad I had that conversation with Justin the other day that made me get my shit together, because I couldn't just call you out of nowhere and go, can I talk to you please for an hour and a half? No, so it's a great excuse just to go, great, we're going to have this conversation, and it's a lovely thing, and it's connected me to people I'm so happy to have been connected with. So thank you for that, you know, and thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. So nice. And I really like what you're doing with your podcast. It's your conversations are interesting, and I'm always interested in earnestness. People like we just eschew from sarcasm and just make us look cool, but actually get into the details of what the craft is about. Yeah. All of us who, you know, I say it like we dedicate our life to it. There's like, because it's such a fine line between life and work. Because I'm here then practicing a new act. I'm doing a kind of silk act with a big silk, doing a serpentine silk thing, but as a failing magician for the opening of the show, where I get a kid up and whatever. So I'm working on that thing. And actually, Mac King does he supports this charity over here that's called Opportunity Village for people with kids with social or mental or physical differences. And so I'm going to do that here. And it's a family show this time. I did it last year too, but then it was an adult event. Now it's a family thing. So now all of a sudden I'm like, I have a chance to run these two new acts there. So my day then is in this, and I'm writing, which is really rewarding for me, and then recording podcasts with people, and now now being on a podcast. So my life work balance is like it tips deep into work, because work is also my passion. When I'm not performing, I am reading and taking in things, and I'm always like, that's where like you want to have that the balance between the show and the human aspect of it. Because if you have a rich human life, this is where you draw all of your stories. And you're talking to a comedian who's in the show here now, Ken Garr, and he goes, my first album, stand-up album, there I was like talking about what it's like to be single and whatever. I mean, talking about lots of things, but that's like a theme. And now goes, and then he got married, and it's just like, it's about that. And then the next thing, now he's divorced, and now it's a different. So like how life is flavoring just when he said 1, 2, 3, there you go. That's those 3-4 years, whatever, of my life. Yeah. You have it depicted in your work, and when you're doing magic or whatever, it's maybe not quite as story driven as comedy, because you have to say words all the time, but routines restrict a little bit more maybe what you talk about, but it's still in your work, even if it's just like you said, the great comment that someone said after the last show makes you walk out there and being yourself differently. Yeah. Somebody writing something nice about me in some British papers that nobody cares or but that I read it there and then, that was like change. You're going like, all right, went from going ta-da to going ta-da.
Yeah.
Showing my ta-da with my hands and then a big open. I'm ready to take you on ta-da with the arms there.
Yeah.
Realizing this is an audio thing.
But let's all do that, you know. We can comment on people's stuff on social media and do that same thing, you know. So I think it's a big lesson and a reminder.
It is. It is.
Mate, thank you so much. Is there anywhere you'd like people to go? Is there? I'll top and tail it anyway. But is there other?
The key thing is, you can see me performing anywhere, and if I'm terrible at social media. A lot less consistent with social media than I am with my podcast. So the key place to find me is The Way of the Showman, the podcast. You can find that anywhere where you get podcasts. You can find me on captainfrodo.com if you're interested in sending me an email or whatever, or on on Facebook and Instagram as Captain Frodo Santini. So if you're interested in finding me there, but the main thing, if you're interested in my line of thinking and the pursuits of the craft, then The Way of the Showman. And there I'm talking to performers, and it's talking to, like you're doing here now, like you're branching out away from magic. I'm talking to magicians like Mac and Mario and Nick, but I'm also have an ongoing conversation about art through people who do juggling. So that's kind of through Jay. I like have this separate thing of people who are doing material that is on one level the same. We're dealing with the same things there within magic. It's like juggling is about tricks as well. But there are differences, but there are also similarities. So if you're interested in sort of expanding your vocabulary of interests and thoughts that you've had about it, I often find that when I'm watching a movie or reading a book, a novel or non-fiction, and that you find interesting stuff. I like poetry, so I have acts that are, in my mind, a complete rip-off of the structure of a poem. So. Right. Where like it just going, oh, this is awesome, and how that builds up. So when that final line comes in the poem, and then I'm not talking about those things that they're talking about in a poem, but finding these structures in other things. And if you are interested in that kind of input, then I think the exploration of The Way of the Showman is for you. I
agree. It's great. And listen, Frodo, thank you so much. It's flown as it always does. I've loved it. And
so good to talk
in
to
touch. You. Yeah, thank you for your time, mate.
Have a good one.
Take care. Bye. So thanks very much again to Frodo. Thanks to Jay Gilligan for putting us in touch or back in touch. And once again, thanks to Stuart Davis for spending so long editing my podcasts even, for very little reward. So thanks to Stuart. As I said at the beginning, if you could check out his stuff, if you're in Vegas or near Vegas, go and watch him perform, or wherever you are. He does do conventions and things like that. So if you see his name, you think, oh, I've never heard of him. Well, you have now, but tell people about him as well, because he's just a great performer and a great storyteller, I reckon, as well. And his book's coming up, which is just so exciting. It's right up my street. So I'll let you know when that's out. And I'm sure if you follow him on Instagram, social media, wherever you lurk, that'd be great. What else shall I say to you? Yes, review. Please give me a review. That'd be good. As I said at the beginning, newsletter, stevefaulkner.com/newsletter, stevefaulkner.com/newsletter. And I'm just finally, after, 4 years, maybe even more, finishing my video course on the Royal Road to Card Magic, which is currently standing at about 320 videos. It's been a project. And now I'm editing the last bit. And I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be very happy when the editing is finished, because I despise that. Sitting in front of a computer for 9 or 10 hours a day isn't what I'm wired for. But thanks very much for listening. Give it a share. Give me some feedback. Let me know you're there, and that'll be lovely. And thanks again to the wonderful Captain Frodo. Have a great one. Cheers.